Buying land is difficult and costly. There just simply isn't enough information out there on buying raw land. This is how you can buy the right piece of land and save money while doing it. Today, I'm gonna give you a few tips that will point you in the right direction while you're buying land. Most importantly, I'm gonna give you tips that will save you money and will allow you to come out ahead while you're doing it, so that you can feel confident and well educated in your decisions when buying raw land. And that starts right now. Okay, so the first tip when buying raw land that will help you save money and do it the smart way is ensuring the piece of land that you're buying is surveyed. A survey is the art and science of establishing and reestablishing corners, lines, boundaries, and monuments of real property based upon recorded documents, historical evidence, and present standards of practice. Now, what that means in layman's terms or Jamie terms is that you'll know exactly what you're buying, corner to corner, exactly what piece of land you're purchasing. Now, I know you might be thinking that you saw the listing says it's 3.5 acres, so that's that. Well, listings naturally round up, round down, they're just sales tactics. You purchasing land based off of information that you saw on the listing means nothing from a legal standpoint, which is why you need the land to be surveyed. Most importantly, you need to ensure that the survey is recent, within the last maybe 5 to 10 years, especially if the land has been vacant for some times. See, what happens when there's empty land is people take it. So neighbors may have encroached on the land a little bit, building a fence a little too deep into that vacant lot, maybe grabbing some of that vacant lot for a child's playground. With the land survey, you can actually get back that land and ensure when you think you're buying 3.5 acres of land, you're actually getting that. I have heard horror stories online where people thought they were buying 10 acres and in reality got 5. Quick pro tip. You, the buyer, should never be the one paying for the survey. The seller should be the one paying for that land survey. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, if I'm doing this the wrong way. But from what I've seen, there's no point that you buying it should be the one paying to assist them in selling it. Another tip to help you buy land and save money is never pay an agent or anybody or an agency to go find land on your behalf. Now, this is a viable product and I understand why it exists in the market, but it just simply isn't necessary. If you have the ability and the Wi-Fi connection to hop on YouTube to listen to me rant, you also have the ability to hop on listing sites and to find your own plots of land. Unless you're an outlier, I think most people would benefit from doing their own research, getting more educated in the space, and finding their own pieces of land to go look at. Here's the pro tip. I'm not telling you not to use agents at all. I'm telling you not to pay for them. You are the buyer. They should be trying to sell you the pieces of land. You don't pay them to go find it for you. So here's how things shook out for me when I recently purchased 3 acres of land in upstate New York. I found about maybe 20 different listings. I reached out to everybody, and the agents of the seller contacted me back. At that point, I went and saw the land. Now, any good agent worth their weight in salt, they're gonna ask you what you're interested in and see if they have any other plots of land that you may wanna buy. So the piece of land that I purchased, I didn't find it myself. The agent suggested I check it out, but I didn't pay the agent. I went and saw one piece of land that I was not going to purchase, and the agent said, "Hold on a second, bucko, you might be interested in X, Y, and Z." And we continued our relationship from there. Agents will work hard for you because they get paid by the seller. On top of that, they'll work extra hard for you if they believe and are aware that you are a serious buyer. When I was chatting with agents, I let them know I had cash on hand and I was ready to make a deal. Even going to see land is expensive. It's not uncommon for buyers to hop on a plane and fly to another state just to look at a piece of land that they're interested in buying, relocating, homesteading, or starting a glamping business on. But there are some things you can do to mitigate that cost. The most important thing that I recommend you doing is batching. Never get in your car to go see one piece of land at a time. I was living in New York City while in the act of purchasing and looking at land in upstate New York. It was about a 150-mile drive one way. So every time I got in my car and paid those extremely high gas prices that we have now to go look at a piece of land, I was bleeding money. So what I did was only see land in batches. I would work with the agent who was selling me a couple different pieces of land, and I would tell him or her that I want to see 3 to 4 things in one day. This allowed me to get a lot of knowledge very fast and also to make my dollar stretch a little bit further, so I was only having to pay for gas once and seeing 3 or 4 pieces of land rather than going up and seeing each piece of land individually. This saved me money, this saved me time, this saved me a headache, and it also made me more educated quicker on buying raw land. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, it takes money to make money. Unfortunately, it's semi-true. When buying raw land, you want to have your finances in order prior to starting. Now, I would highly recommend that you buy land in cash. It's going to be a lot easier to be more competitive in this market. On top of that, loans for raw land are pretty hard to come by. That being said, they do exist. But if you can't purchase your land all out, let's say that you're buying 140 acres for $1 million. Well, I actually wouldn't recommend you buying that raw land all out. It'll completely wipe you out of funds, or maybe not. Maybe you got it like that. But what it can do is completely wipe you out of funds and you'll have no money left to actually invest in the land that you just purchased to build it up. So if you are gonna be taking out a loan, put yourself in the best position to get the best rates and the best deals. What I mean by that is, if you know you're gonna be buying land in some time, double check that you're up to date on all your credit card payments. Don't take out any small loans prior to that, such as buying a new car, something along those lines. You definitely wanna check your credit score. You want to feel as though you're preparing for war. Now, it may not make a ton of sense exactly how doing this will help you save money, but if you're familiar with how a little change in your interest rate going up can play a large factor in how much you actually pay throughout the duration of the loan over 30, 40, 50 years, this is major, and it takes a little bit of your time today to save you money for years to come. Now, I have a few more tips to go, especially the last tip that you must take into consideration when buying raw land, especially if you're trying to not break the bank. But first, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, which is me. I just want to let you guys know I recently started my one-on-one coaching and conversation business. So if you're interested in having a one-on-one conversation with me for an hour and 15 minutes, check the link in the description below. I can't wait to guide you on off-grid setups, glamping businesses, buying raw land, marketing your products, whatever it may be. I can't wait to chat with you and go through that process. Moving on, you need to take utilities into account. I don't care if you plan on buying raw land and living off grid there. You want to know all of your options now because things may change for you in the future and you don't want to get jammed up with crazy prices because you didn't take that into consideration when you bought the piece of land. Things you should think about is how raw is the piece of land that you're getting. Some pieces of land still do have septics underneath. They have access to running water already, electrical, etc. So not every raw piece of land is as raw as we make it out to be. You want to know what your options are if you can hook up to city water. Is there a road that is owned by the town that needs to get cleaned by the town, snow plowed by the town, etc. to your piece of land? Do you have simple access to electricity, internet, things like that? Now, I know this may all sound like a lot, but you shouldn't be rushing into this process. Continue to do education and think and take it slow. Do not allow any slimy agent or seller to bully you into moving fast. Now, before my most important tip, a bonus tip is keep easements in mind. An easement is a right of way by the city that allows someone to use your land to get to theirs. Think about 2 pieces of land and one is landlocked from a main road. So the city may say that the owner who is landlocked is allowed to drive through your land to get to theirs. I would stay away from these pieces of land no matter what. Easements work both ways. Maybe the only way to get into your land that you're thinking about buying is through an easement on someone else's land. What you're doing is attaching yourself to the hip of someone else that you have no clue who they are. Also, that person intrinsically has been there before you. They may feel some type of ownership over that easement, that road, or whatever the case may be. It's just a sticky situation that I personally do not want to even go near. Unless you already know the person who is either going to use the easement on your piece of land or who you're going to use their easement, so to speak, I would just stay away from it. It just sounds a little muddy. The last and most important tip I have for you to save money and this will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on what you do with that land, is has that land ever flooded? How recently did it flood? And is that land in a flood zone? And which flood zone is it in? A flood zone is an area's flood zone designation determined by FEMA. FEMA uses a variety of different codes to communicate the specific flood risk to an area. There's 3 different types of flood zones, and I'm gonna break them down for you. So first, you have minimal risk zones. In these zones, the risk of flooding is minimal, though flooding is still possible. These zones are either zone C or zone X. Then you have moderate risk zones. In a moderate risk zone, it's less likely that the area will experience flooding, but it is still possible. So again, if you're purchasing a moderate risk zone, you're taking that risk and that gamble that this land could potentially flood. Then you have what I call the no-go zones, the high-risk zones. These zones are known as a Special Flood Hazard Area, or SFHA. Now that's a lot to think about, so I actually have a special tool for you. Check out the link in the description, and I'm gonna send you right over to FEMA's website. There's a map that all you have to do is put in the address of the land that you're looking to purchase, and it'll tell you what zoning that land has in terms of flooding. Buying land is difficult, but it is so fulfilling, and it is possible. Check out the playlist on the screen right now for more tips and tricks when buying raw land for homesteading, glamping businesses, tiny homes, tents, domes, or yurts.